You know what's strange? We talk about ADHD like it's just being distracted, messy, or bad at focusing, but we almost never talk about the little habits people build just to survive their own brain. The tab they keep open for 3 weeks, the alarm that means nothing, the sudden burst of cleaning at 1:13 a.m., the way one tiny notification can erase an entire thought. These aren't random quirks, they're clues. Stay with me because what I'm about to tell you will completely change how you see people with ADHD. You're standing in the kitchen, phone in one hand, cabinet open, trying to remember why you walked in. The fridge hums. A spoon is in the sink. Somewhere, a message buzzes, and suddenly your brain opens 5 new windows at once. You were going to drink water, then answer one text, then check the time, then somehow you're watching a video about how octopuses sleep. 20 minutes later, the water is still not in your hand. And the weirdest part is you weren't doing nothing. Inside, it felt loud, busy, urgent, like your mind was sprinting, but your body forgot what race it entered. If that sounds painfully familiar, the first thing to know is this: ADHD is not a lack of effort. It's often effort without traction. The first habit is starting everything and finishing it later, maybe. Psychologists connect this to executive dysfunction, meaning the brain systems responsible for planning, prioritizing, starting, stopping, and remembering the next step don't coordinate smoothly. Russell Barkley's Teen 97 model in Psychological Bulletin described ADHD as deeply tied to behavioral inhibition and executive functions like working memory and self regulation. Simple translation: your brain's manager is trying to run a busy restaurant, but half the staff keep leaving the room. This is why you can deeply want to clean your room, answer the email, or finish the assignment and still sit there frozen. Beginning requires your brain to gather energy, sequence steps, suppress distractions, and hold the goal in mind long enough to act. For many people with ADHD, that first step is the heaviest object in the room. That's why the second habit appears, leaving visual reminders everywhere: shoes by the door, bills on the table, sticky notes on mirrors. Objects become external memory. When working memory is unreliable, the world becomes your second brain. The mess isn't always carelessness. Sometimes it's a map. Move the object and the reminder disappears. But here's where it gets interesting. People with ADHD don't simply have no focus, they often have inconsistent focus. 1 hour, they can't read a paragraph. The next, they enter hyperfocus and spend 6 hours perfecting one tiny thing no one asked them to perfect. Psychologists call this attentional regulation, the ability to direct attention on purpose, not just have attention. It's less like a broken flashlight and more like a flashlight with a strange switch. Sometimes it won't turn on. Sometimes it burns through the table. Research on ADHD and reward processing, including Edmund Sunuga-Barkey's dual pathway model, suggests that motivation and delay can feel different in the ADHD brain. Immediate interest pulls harder than distant reward. So the fourth habit is chasing urgency. People wait until the deadline is close, not always because they're lazy, but because panic finally creates enough stimulation to make the task feel real. That creates the classic ADHD cycle: delay, shame, adrenaline, miracle, productivity, exhaustion, promise to never do it again, repeat. Wild, right? The brain learns I can only move when it's on fire. So the fifth habit is task hopping. A new plan feels exciting. A half finished plan feels like chewing cold toast. Then there's the sixth habit, losing time. You sit down for 5 minutes, and suddenly the room is darker. Or you think you have plenty of time until you have 7 minutes to do a 40-minute routine. Many people call this time blindness, and it's tied to executive functioning and temporal processing. Barkley has often described ADHD as a disorder of self-regulation across time. The future doesn't always create a strong emotional signal until it becomes now. Think of it like this: other people feel a deadline approaching like a train in the distance. For you, the train is either invisible or already in your living room. No middle stage. That's why people with ADHD often set 10 alarms, overestimate what they can do in an hour, underestimate transitions, and say I'm leaving now while somehow still not wearing shoes. Research from Farone and colleagues in the 2021 World Federation of ADHD International Consensus Statement emphasizes that ADHD is a valid neurodevelopmental disorder, not a character flaw or a modern excuse. And that matters because when time keeps slipping, people don't just lose appointments, they lose trust in themselves. They start narrating their own life with, "Why am I like this?" The seventh habit is emotional intensity, not drama. Intensity. One critical comment can replay for days. One exciting idea can make you feel like your whole life has turned a corner. Psychologists call this emotional dysregulation, which means emotions rise fast, hit hard, and take longer to settle. A 2014 review by Philip Shaw, Argyris Stringeris, Joel Nigg, and Ellen Leibenluft in the American Journal of Psychiatry noted that emotion dysregulation is common in ADHD and contributes to real impairment across life. This is why the eighth habit is overexplaining. You send three messages to fix the tone of the first one. You apologize for being weird. You look calm outside while internally building a courtroom, a funeral, and a comeback speech all at once. The feeling isn't always bigger because the situation is bigger. Sometimes it's bigger because the brake system is slower. And here's the kicker, many ADHD habits are coping strategies wearing the costume of chaos. The ninth habit is interrupting, doodling, pacing, or multitasking to stay engaged. Interrupting may be an attempt to catch the thought before it vanishes. Doodling may be a way to stay present. Pacing during phone calls may be self regulation through movement. The 10th habit is changing hobbies constantly. People mock it as never sticking with anything, but often it's novelty seeking, the brain searching for the moment it finally locks in and says, there, that feels alive. Now, before the comment section explodes, this doesn't mean every messy desk, late reply, or intense emotion is ADHD. And it doesn't mean ADHD explains everything a person does. Here's the dark, nuanced layer. Sometimes the habits that begin as survival become hiding. A person jokes about being scatterbrained because it hurts us less than admitting they're scared of disappointing everyone again. They call themselves lazy before anyone else can. They become charming, funny, useful, or invisible because shame taught them to perform competence instead of asking for support. The healthy version of these habits is adaptation. You create systems. You use movement, reminders, structure, body doubling, timers, and compassion. The trauma version is punishment. You bully yourself into productivity. You wait for panic to prove you care. You avoid people because every unanswered message becomes evidence that you're a bad friend. That's the part nobody sees. ADHD doesn't just affect attention, it can affect identity. But the reframe is this: you're not broken, you're not careless. You're not secretly irresponsible because your brain needs different scaffolding. You're not lazy. You're understimulated, overloaded, or stuck at the doorway between intention and action. You're not too much. You feel in high definition. You're not inconsistent because you don't care. Your attention is interest based, urgency sensitive, and easily hijacked by whatever feels most alive right now. And yes, responsibility still matters. Repair still matters. Systems still matter. But shame is a terrible operating system. It drains the exact energy you need to build a better one. When you understand the psychology, the habits stop looking like moral failures and start looking like signals. The open tabs say, I'm trying to hold everything. The alarms say, I know time slips. The late night cleaning says, my brain finally found the switch. The unfinished projects say, I have more sparks than structure. Maybe ADHD is not a story about people who can't pay attention. Maybe it's a story about people paying attention to too many things at once, while the world keeps asking them to move in a straight line. And maybe the work is not to become someone else, but to build a life with enough rhythm, friction, softness, and support for your brain to stop fighting itself. Because sometimes the person who looks distracted isn't absent. They're just trying to come back to the room. If this hit home, subscribe to the Psyche Code. And if you want the next deep dive, watch the video on why people with ADHD feel exhausted after doing nothing. It might explain the kind of tired sleep doesn't always fix.